Welcome everyone to another Let's Play Kerbal Space Program with Sexy Neckbeard. Today I will actually be getting my Space Empire off the ground into orbit in the form of a satellite. But before I do that, let's just take a quick look at what my universe looks like. And it's basically the same as anybody else's new game, except I have this guy, Flying Turtle 1 Mark 1 debris, still orbiting. And what's the big deal with this guy? Well, as you can see, his periapsis in the bottom here, he has a very small, very low periapsis. The altitude is 30,350 meters, and his speed there is 2,488.4 meters per second. I know this because I watched this guy orbit several times, and since I don't have a satellite in orbit, there's no way for me to accelerate time, so it took a little while to gather this data. The main thing I wanted to see is this guy slowing down? Will he eventually burn up? And sadly the answer is no. So he is not even losing 0.1 meters per second. He just stays in a very stable orbit. Now, this is just frustrating to me because 30,000 meters is really low. To some perspective, the edge of the atmosphere is at 60,000 meters. So right now this debris is about to enter the very fringes of the atmosphere. And although I could see it not really slowing down above 50,000 or 30,000 is really halfway from the edge of the atmosphere to sea level. So I don't think there's any good explanation why this thing is not experiencing drag. It really should be. It really should be. But that's okay. What we'll do is we'll use this as a motivation to create an intercept mission in the future. And we'll just have some spaceship meet up with it, and we'll eliminate it using the methods to remove debris that I talked about in episode 3. So, I'm going to start building my satellite now. And while I do that, I'm going to explain where we are in this game, because this is essentially episode 1 in the Space Empire construction series. You can consider episodes 1, 2, and 3 like a tutorial or like a prologue. And now we're really getting into the meat of it, which is to get objects to orbit and to land in various places. Hopefully some really exciting stuff. While I'm explaining where I've been, I first want to make sure you guys know what I'm doing with my satellite. I'm basically going to be taking the Flying Turtle 1 Mark 1 body and putting a satellite on top. So the only thing that will really be new when I'm building the satellite is the very top portion of the satellite itself. Unfortunately, I can't just delete this and bring in a satellite or start building from the top up. Kerbal Space Program treats the command pod that you select as really the centerpiece or the mother of every other part. So that's why when you select things, it always selects the part from the part you select away from the command module. So it always selects further and further away. So if I select this, it'll select everything below it. And now if I select that thing below it, it'll take everything further away from the command pod. Basically all this means is when I want to design a satellite, I'm going to have to start from scratch, even though I want to use this entire body. But that's okay. And during that time I'll be able to discuss briefly some of the rules that I have for my own Space Empire construction. So in episode 1, we got the Flying Turtle 1 Mark 1 into orbit. And we also did it without crashing anything onto land. You'll notice one of my rules for role-playing is I don't want any parts to be killing innocent Kerbals. That everything should fall to Kerbin, either with a parachute or it should fall into the water. That's a special rule I'm imposing on myself as kind of a situation one might find in the real world. You're not allowed to just... NASA's not allowed to just drop its rockets onto cities, kill thousands of people. I don't know how it works in the world of Kerbin. Maybe the Kerbals are much more forgiving about the loss of Kerbal life, but I'm going to assume not. So episode 2 was just how to get my flying vehicle going, and that's for Kerbal recovery. If I happen to land a pod somewhere on Kerbin, not exactly near the land center, the space center, I'm going to fly out and I'm going to recover that pilot with my remote recovery vehicle. So that was all episode 2. I was able to demonstrate that the initial design, which is less efficient, but it's much improved now at least, could get to the North Pole with some fuel left over, and I'm confident that the new design can actually get all the way to the North Pole and back. So essentially it can at least get anywhere on the planet. What else do we have? In episode 3 I basically just went over vehicles. They were kind of useless vehicles, I would say. Probably none of them will appear later in the series, as they don't really serve a purpose, other than they were just some ideas I thought of and I decided to make. Really, it was just kind of fooling around, so nothing too important there if you missed that. I think that's it for the episode review, so let's talk briefly about the changes I want to make to Kerbal Space Program's rules. First and foremost, I want to make sure that I never endanger the citizens of Kerbin. I want to make sure that at all points I'm protecting them. Let's imagine that I lose all funding if I kill any of them. The next thing is, I want to add these little scientific devices. I want to pretend that these satellites I put into orbit have some functional purpose outside the purpose that they have in the game. So I've added some communication antennae. This is just for role-playing purposes. Obviously I don't think that these actually are necessary. I'm pretty sure that you can access objects from the tracking center. Let me just call this a set. So in the tracking center, I'm pretty sure you can access objects even if they don't have a communication array. We'll find out, of course, as soon as we launch some satellites which don't have a communication array, and then I can amend my words then if I'm wrong. So the other thing is, I don't want to leave any debris in space. In episode 1, you saw that I actually was trying to avoid this. The reason why the debris that is currently in space goes to such a low periapsis of 30,000 was because I intentionally fired retrograde in order to prevent the module from orbiting forever. And I think correctly thought that 30,000 would be low enough that it would eventually fall back down to Kerbin. Now, what was the one main problem with this idea? I didn't take into account where it would fall. So it was kind of a risky, this could land on some heavily populated area. But since it was just a tutorial, and it wasn't even successful completely, I'm just going to say, okay, fine, we'll move forward. Maybe send out a public apology. I'm sorry for those Kerbals that, well, they haven't been lost because the object never fell from space. So what we'll be doing though is we'll be going up to collect that eventually. And here's this mystery again. I don't know why, for some confounded reason, it won't let you attach stuff. Ah, see, it had it there. Okay, good. And I'm also just going to be kind of playing the common sense thing. Like, if these modules, right now the way drag is rendered in the game, the physics for it, it's not done aerodynamically. Just each part has some drag coefficient. You can see this one has a drag coefficient of 0.2. And I'm led to believe that this is just multiplied by the mass of each part to get your total drag. And the drag has nothing to do with the actual aerodynamic shape. So although this is somewhat less aerodynamic to have just a flat cylinder, this is considered actually more aerodynamic in the game than if I was to add these rounded shaped parachutes. The reason why is that these parachutes have some drag themselves, and although the mass is 0.3 and the drag is 0.1, if I just assume the mass is multiplied by drag, the drag of this object, the total drag is very small. Around, well, exactly 0.03. That's still 0.03 drag more than if I didn't add these at all. So there's no shape that is taken into consideration right now. I want to make sure that my objects do look somewhat aerodynamic whenever possible. Okay, I think that's about it. I'll be going into more of the rules as I encounter them, really, as I encounter situations which need explaining. But the bottom line is just going to be that I'm going to play this as much as a role-play situation as possible. So as much as possible, I'm just going to be making decisions which, for example, the coordinators at NASA would also have to make, to take into consideration the things that maybe aren't needed in the game, but I want to introduce them anyways. With all that being said, I think a sat is done, and we need a name for this. What name? Okay, my naming convention. Feel free to contribute any name that you want. The standard I'm following right now is water creatures, like the squid, the shark. Those are for land vehicles, including airborne land vehicles. It doesn't really make sense. I should say Kerbal vehicles, ones that won't leave the atmosphere. Ones that leave the atmosphere and that are manned, I'm trying to use normal land creatures for those. Like even though turtles could be a water creature, let's just assume it could be a lion or a rhino, stuff like that. And for unmanned satellites, I'm going to make it some kind of flying creature. So the distinction will be water, land, and air. So what do we call our satellites then? We need some kind of creature of the sky. Well, the skinny pigeon. Mark 1. I have no ability to name things interestingly. That's really why I ask people to suggest their names. But okay, the only thing we're missing on the skinny pigeon, the satellite top portion is correct. Actually, what I'm going to do is very briefly, I added a docking clamp to this guy as well, in case you guys didn't see that. I'm going to quickly, I saved this already, I'm going to cancel this, and I'm going to save this as basic satellite. Okay, so we have basic satellite. Skinny Pigeon 1 Mark 1, which is the full design. Great, great. The last thing we need is in the same style as the flying turtle. I want all my engines to fire at the same time because I'm using the fuel connectors to drain only the outside engines first. But I still want all 3 engines to fire. I explained why in episode 1. And this looks good. So let's save and let's get this guy into space. Okay, here we are. The Skinny Pigeon 1 Mark 1 ready for launch. The only thing I wanted to discuss first is what should be my angle of orbit around Kerbin. In the future I'm going to have my space stations go in the equatorial orbit, because that's, if I zoom out a lot, you can see that basically the entire solar system is in a plane, more or less. And this is more or less true of our own solar system. So this satellite is just going to be used for time compression, essentially. So I want it out of the way. I think north would be one good answer, but in order to get us over the water, I think I'm just going to let this one go northeast-southwest, which probably won't interfere with any orbits as well. And space is pretty big. We can always just go further away from Kerbin or closer to Kerbin to avoid any intersecting paths. Okay, so it's settled. I'm going to head northeast, my 45-degree line. Let's throttle up and get this mission underway. I really like to hit caps lock, which gives me this more fine-tuned controls. Like, for example, if I take the caps lock off, if I hit left, it jumps. But now I'm going to hit right, and you can see that the controls are much, much finer. So I really like that. It's been useful for me at least. Let's get this guy, 45, over the water. Because for role-playing purposes, I want to go over the water to be safe. Just in case something happens, we have some fatal structural failure, and everything blows up, at least it'll blow up in the water. Or at least that's the idea. I like my job as the Kerbal Space Program Coordinator, and I don't want to lose it. So, good. Now we're getting to about 10,000. This is really when Saxon Neckbeard always makes his move. I have no idea why. I still don't know what is optimal, but we don't mess with tradition. So, here we go. Down, down, down. And just about out of that 3 side tank fuel. We'll drop those, their parachutes will go off, and hopefully that will not hit anybody. In fact, even more, we hope even more that the parachute's open. Here we go, here we go. And spacebar. Okay, light blue means that the parachutes haven't deployed yet, but they are activated, so they're going to open when appropriate. And we'll see this will disappear when those actually open. For the time being, we're already going 1,000 meters per second, so we're doing pretty well. Ah, yeah, good, those parachutes open. That's good. Okay, well, we're slightly east of northeast, so let's correct that a little bit. Then after that, I guess we can just cut throttle and wait to get to our apoapsis to complete our orbit. And I'm seeing now that we probably have way too much fuel for this mission. I like to continue my role-playing idea. I really like to not dump rockets back down to the planet when they are full of rocket fuel, since rocket fuel is a pretty dangerous thing. Oh my goodness, we have quite an apoapsis already. And good, you can see we're at a 45-degree tilt. That is exactly what I wanted. Alright, so what is left? What are the remaining challenges for this mission? Since it seems like we're almost done. I want to get our satellite into an orbit, but I also want to crash the remainder, the main engine, back into the water. And actually this orbit is perfect. You see it will take us all the way around Kerbin and back to this huge body of water. So if I play my cards right, I should be able to get this orbit stable, and then crash the main fuel cell, the main fuel body, engine, what have you, back into the water, and then I can use my RCS, my monoprop, to reestablish a stable orbit. Well, enough talking, let's accelerate to the apoapsis to get this thing into a stable orbit first. Okay, good. 1 minute. Add maneuver. It's pretty easy to use this maneuver thing. That's a little too much, huh? Something like that. Maybe a little less. Okay, good enough. Alright, now you'll notice WASD does nothing right now because I don't have any thrust, so let's give it a little thrust so it can turn. We still have 30 seconds before the burn. Now I'm still convinced that this node, that means the node is happening. And if your estimated burn time, for example, was 40 seconds, that means I think you have to start 20 seconds early so that, because you'll finish 20 seconds late, so there's symmetry. But what do I know? That's just a guess. Let's get this thing done. Go all the way! Burning, burning, burning. Paying very close attention to the blue. And... wow, I really nailed it. Just got lucky. It's, I think, whoop. We're losing it. Too much. Too much. Again. Chasing it. Alright, 5 meters per second. That's pretty good. That's perfect. Okay. Now just to go over what I meant again. After this thing gets into its stable orbit, which it now is, I'm going to add another maneuver to fire retrograde. And this is too late. Something around here. And what I want it to do is burn up, crash into the water, harmlessly. So we can make this a little further forward, maybe right here. That's good, that's good. Maybe a little further even. And 15,000. Since I know I have already that one unfortunate piece of debris circling which gets down to 30,000, I'm going to make sure that this one gets down below 10. I don't know what to say. If it survives below 10, I just surrender. I surrender everything. You can take it. So what do I have? 2,000. That's sufficient. So exactly this is what I want. And after I do this, I will then turn my satellite 180 degrees and fire Prograde to once again establish a stable orbit. And then everybody's happy. Except for the people who hopefully don't get hit by the large amount of rocket fuel that will still be left in these tanks. I hope, for my own sake, that that's not a problem. But I don't think it's good to have rockets crash back down with tons and tons of rocket fuel. That doesn't strike me as a good idea. Rocket fuel is, I mean, pretty explosive, right? So let's just hope nothing happens. Alright, 150 meters, wow, per second is really a very small velocity change. They estimate only 5 seconds of burn. Yeah, I tend to agree. It's probably all it needs. What do I do then? Jeez, that's a lot of rocket fuel. Well, nothing we can do about it. We just messed up and we're going to have to face the consequences. I think, actually, that this is such a great orbit, such a great decay. Actually, I'm going to do something even more. I'm going to move it a little forward and drop it a little. Yeah, it just looks great. I don't think unless it hits the the island over there, very small chance of this doing any harm to anyone. Okay, good. Now it's really terrible. It's definitely crashing. Let's fire a little more prograde. And this is all you do in Kerbal Space Program. Make maneuvers and fiddle with them for hours. Okay, but I'm really keeping this one this time. I'm really keeping it. Whatever it was, I'm keeping it. Accelerate time for a minute. And give ourselves like 20 seconds. Whoop, too little. Let's give ourselves like 20 seconds to actually find where the... Oh dear, let's get this going. Burn some monoprop, but who cares? No, come back. Come back. Okay, this should work still. Almost there. Almost there. Okay, good. So let's burn the rest of this 100 meters per second away. Eject our engine and then we can reestablish a stable orbit with the monoprop, the RCS. It might be better to use a xenon thing, but whatever. The xenon gas seems to be more efficient at changing this stuff. Changing orbits, reestablishing orbits. Alright, I'm within 2 meters per second, so we can't complain about that, can we? Since I'm gonna move forward after I release the main body, I want the main body to release behind me so I don't run into it. So I'm gonna face forward, so that when I jettison this thing, it goes backwards, I go forward, and then I go further forward to reestablish orbit. Spinning. Ah, so much spinning. Alright, space. Now it's up to us to get stable orbit back. And I'll be doing this by engaging my RCS thrusters with R, and then pressing H to translate forward. So instead of using the thrusters for just rotational movement, which is what they're designed for, I'm going to use them for actual thrust. Not rotational, but translational movement. Good enough. RCS, and press H. And there, somewhere behind us, I assume. There it is. There goes the Skinny Pigeon 1 Mark 1 debris. Hopefully it actually does not continue to orbit. I hope I never see it again. I guess if we get this back to about 100, which is where it was to begin with, then we should, in principle, be back to where we started, at a stable orbit. And you can see this. I have two like containers of this monoprop. It's just way more than enough. And I still even have my docking clamp here, so this is great. Let's even extend my panels. I don't think we'll have any sun here, but yeah, 0, blocked by Kerbin. Okay, well, let's see what we're doing now. Do we have a stable orbit? We do. Ta-da! Mission accomplished. So you can see now that the debris, which I will try to zoom in so I can track, set this target. We can see this debris is going to crash into the planet, supposedly. I really hope it does. If it doesn't, I'm not a friend to you anymore, Kerbal Space Program, but I think it will. And we have still established this pretty stable, almost circular orbit So mission accomplished. Let's just zoom forward, fast forward I should say. And this is the main reason why I wanted a satellite, so that I can crunch time if I really need to. In some of the earlier videos I was doing, it was nighttime and actually got hard to see. Okay, I messed up on my video recording settings. It's actually my fault, but it still would be nice to just accelerate time so that when I look at this Flying Turtle 1 Mark 1 debris all the time, I can view it at faster than 1x. There we go, skinny pigeon debris. And I can even look at this guy. We might even be able to see his periapsis. I can show you his 2488.4. Whoa, which one do I follow? Ooh. Okay, I guess since this guy shouldn't be returning, let's follow him instead. Oh, I left my RCS on. It didn't do anything, but let's just take it off. Alright, so this guy is at 40,000 and falling, and he is falling, but looks like he's gonna avoid the island. The only other island he needs to avoid is that one, but I think he's not in line with it. Okay, good. So everything's going according to plan. This guy's down to 30,000. 25,000. His speed is still increasing. Oh, there he goes. I didn't see exactly when that was. I can check the video afterwards, but good. So maybe this guy missed the Flying Turtle debris. It looks like he missed the cut by about 5,000 meters. If I got him below 25,000, I think it disappeared there. So if we get it below, if we just get it to around 20,000, it seems sufficient. Well, great. I might adjust this satellite's orbit slightly, but there's no reason for you guys to have to watch that. It'll be boring and meaningless. So we'll call this mission successful. And this is Sexy Neckbeard, signing off for this episode. I'll see you next time, where I suppose we will launch our intercept mission for the debris. Thanks for watching.